She vanished overnight with their daughter when her billionaire husband's vengeful mistress came for her. If you say a word about what you found, neither you nor your precious little Leo will be safe. The painting isn't the only thing that can disappear without a trace. The teacup slipped from Gemma's fingers, shattering against the hardwood floor of her husband's study. Her hands trembled as she reread the letter, the elegant cursive handwriting unmistakably belonging to Natalia Kozlov, the Russian heiress who'd been spending far too much time with her husband lately. Footsteps echoed down the hallway. Gemma quickly folded the letter and slipped it into her pocket. "Darling, is everything all right? I heard something break." Preston's voice was smooth as silk, but his eyes were cold as they scanned the room, lingering on the open drawer of his desk. "Just clumsy me," Gemma forced a smile, her heart hammering against her ribs. "What were you looking for in my desk?" Preston asked, his tone casual but with an edge that made the hair on the back of her neck stand up. In that moment, Gemma knew. The man she'd married, the father of her child, was not just having an affair. He was dangerous. "Nothing important," she lied, meeting his gaze steadily. "I was looking for some stationery." As Preston's eyes narrowed with suspicion, one thought crystallized in Gemma's mind: she and her son needed to disappear tonight. Have you ever discovered that your entire life was built on lies? That the person you trusted most in the world might actually be the most dangerous? This is the story of a mother who had to abandon everything and vanish to save the one thing that mattered most, her child. And if you believe in a mother's fierce protection and the courage to start over when everything falls apart, stay with me for this incredible journey of survival, betrayal, and ultimate justice. 3 hours before that fateful moment in Preston's study, Gemma Holloway had been living what appeared to be a charmed life. The spring sunshine streamed through the floor-to-ceiling windows of their Kensington townhouse, illuminating the Monet that Preston had given her for their 5th anniversary. At 38, Gemma maintained the quiet elegance and sharp eye that had once made her London's premier art authenticator. Though she'd stepped away from her career after Leo's birth, she still carried herself with the discernment of someone who could spot a forgery from across a crowded gallery. Mrs. Holloway, the caterers called about tomorrow night's fundraiser. The housekeeper, Mrs. Fleming, appeared in the doorway of the sunroom where Gemma had been reviewing guest lists. "They need final confirmation on the menu." "Thank you, I'll call them shortly." Gemma smiled, though the thought of another Holloway Foundation gala made her stomach clench. Another evening of being paraded as Preston's perfect wife, another night of watching him charm London's elite while she played the supportive spouse. Once, these events had thrilled her. As an art authenticator at the Victoria and Albert Museum, Gemma had moved in prestigious circles, but always as the expert, never as the centerpiece. Preston had changed that. With his family fortune and eye for artistic treasures, Preston Holloway had transformed the Stade Meridian Gallery into London's most exciting art destination. When he'd pursued Gemma, the art world had buzzed with approval, the brilliant authenticator and the visionary collector, a perfect match. 7 years later, the shine had dulled considerably. Preston was away more frequently on acquisition trips, often accompanied by Natalia Kozlov, the daughter of Russian industrialist Viktor Kozlov. Their latest triumph, securing a previously unknown Bellini painting from a private Italian collection, had garnered international headlines and record-breaking crowds at the Meridian. Gemma sipped her tea, allowing herself to acknowledge the doubt that had been growing for months. The Bellini hadn't felt right. Something in the brushwork, something in the craquelure pattern of the aged paint. But when she'd mentioned her concerns, Preston had dismissed them. "Darling, you've been out of the authentication game for years," he'd said with that patronizing smile that had become increasingly familiar. "The world's top experts have verified it. Even the Uffizi curators are convinced." She'd let it go, as she'd learned to do with most of her observations. But the doubt lingered, joining other questions that had been accumulating. The unusual cash flow through their foundation. The midnight phone calls in Russian that Preston thought she couldn't understand. The way certain art pieces disappeared into private collections without proper documentation. "Mommy, look what I made." Leo's voice pulled her from these thoughts as he bounded into the sunroom, his dark curls bouncing with each step. At 7, he was all energy and imagination, with Gemma's amber eyes and Preston's confident smile. "It's my castle," he explained, thrusting a watercolor painting toward her. "See the dragons guarding it? And there's a moat with friendly monsters." "It's magnificent," Gemma said, genuinely impressed by her son's creativity. "You've given the dragons such personality." "Dad said he'd take me to see real castles in Russia this summer," Leo continued, climbing onto the sofa beside her. "With Uncle Victor and Natalia." Gemma's smile froze. "Did he? When did Dad tell you this?" "Last night when he called before bedtime. He said it would be a boys' trip, but I told him you should come too because you know all about old things." Before Gemma could process this, another trip planned without consulting her, another inclusion of the Kozlovs in their family life, her phone chimed with a message from Preston. "Working late with Natalia on Prague acquisition. Don't wait up. P." The familiar message, the familiar dismissal. But this time, it sparked something different. A decision. Today, while Preston was occupied with Natalia, Gemma would finally investigate the nagging concerns that had been accumulating. "Leo, darling, why don't you work on a drawing of what you think is inside your castle? I need to find some papers in Dad's study." Preston's study was his sanctuary, a wood-paneled room filled with art reference books and artifacts too valuable or controversial for public display. He rarely locked it, a gesture of supposed trust that Gemma had never violated. Until today. The room smelled of leather and Preston's sandalwood cologne. Gemma moved purposefully to his desk, a magnificent antique with hidden compartments that he'd proudly shown her when they first married. She began with the obvious drawers, expense reports, gallery inventories, nothing unusual. Then she tried the hidden drawer behind the false panel. Inside was a leather portfolio marked Acquisition Files, Confidential. Gemma's hands trembled slightly as she opened it. The first document was a detailed assessment of the Bellini painting, but not from any recognized authentication expert. This was an analysis of how convincingly the forgery had been executed, with notes about aging techniques and period-appropriate canvas. "Oh my God," she whispered, flipping through more papers. There were dozens of similar assessments for works she recognized, paintings and sculptures that had passed through the Meridian Gallery or been donated to museums through the Holloway Foundation. Each one a sophisticated forgery. Each one authenticated by experts who, according to margin notes, had been appropriately compensated for their opinions. Deeper in the drawer, she found financial records. Millions flowing through shell companies. Names of corrupt officials in various countries. And most damning of all, a handwritten note from Viktor Kozlov outlining the terms of their partnership. The Kozlov family would provide access to stolen masterpieces from Eastern European museums, Preston would arrange for forgeries to replace them, and the Holloway Foundation would launder the originals through private sales to collectors who didn't ask questions. It was an art theft and forgery ring of staggering proportions. And Preston was at the center of it. As Gemma processed this revelation, another document caught her eye. A folder labeled Contingencies. Inside were photos of her, doctored images that appeared to show her in compromising positions with various men. Notes detailed how these could be used if she ever became problematic. There were even documented payments to Mrs. Fleming and other household staff for reporting on Gemma's activities. Her husband hadn't just been deceiving the art world. He'd been actively planning against her, creating insurance to destroy her credibility if she ever threatened him. And then, tucked between these horrifying revelations, was the letter. Written in elegant cursive on heavy stationery embossed with the Kozlov family crest. "Preston, Daddy is concerned about your wife's recent questions. She visited the restoration department at the V&A last month. Did you authorize this? We cannot afford loose ends or sentimental attachments. If you cannot control her, other arrangements will be necessary. Remember what happened to Valdez when he became unstable. If she's discovered anything about the Bellini or the Prague collection, she must be silenced. If you say a word about what you found, neither you nor your precious little Leo will be safe. The painting isn't the only thing that can disappear without a trace. N. That was when the teacup had slipped from Gemma's fingers, when Preston had appeared at the doorway with those cold, calculating eyes. The man she'd married, the father of her child, was not just a criminal. He was capable of threatening her, of endangering their son. If you've ever felt that gut-wrenching moment when you realize someone you love is not who you thought they were, hit that like button right now. And if you're wondering how far a mother will go to protect her child from danger, subscribe to join us on this incredible journey of courage and survival. After Preston left for his meeting with Natalia, Gemma moved with quiet efficiency. She knew she had hours at most before he realized what she discovered. Years of analyzing detailed art forgeries had made her observant, methodical. Now those skills would help her disappear. First, she made a copy of the most damning documents, using her phone to photograph pages from Preston's hidden portfolio. She carefully returned everything to its exact position, even wiping away her fingerprints with her sleeve. Next, she transferred the photos to a secure cloud account that Preston didn't know existed, one she'd maintained from her professional days when source protection had been crucial. Then she went to Leo's room, where he was still happily drawing his castle interior. "Leo, darling," she said, keeping her voice light despite her racing heart. "How would you like to go on a special adventure tonight? Just you and me." His amber eyes lit up immediately. "Like in my spy books? With secret missions?" "Exactly like that," Gemma said, sitting beside him on his bed. "We need to pack very carefully though. Only the most important things that can fit in one backpack each." "Are we going to catch bad guys?" Leo asked excitedly. Gemma hesitated, choosing her words carefully. "No, sweetheart. This is more like going undercover. We need to be very quiet about our plans. It's a secret between just us. Not even Dad can know." "Especially not Dad," Gemma said, her heart breaking at the confusion that flickered across her son's face. "This is a special mission that he can't be part of right now. I'll explain more later, but for now, I need you to be my brave partner. Can you do that?" Leo nodded solemnly. "I can be brave. And Robin can come too." He held up his stuffed fox, his most treasured possession. "Of course Robin is coming. Now, let's pack only what's absolutely necessary." As Leo carefully selected treasures for his backpack, his fox, a few favorite books, the small astronomy kit Preston had given him for his birthday, Gemma moved through the house gathering essentials. Passports and birth certificates from the safe. The emergency cash she kept hidden in a hollowed-out copy of The Picture of Dorian Gray, ironically, a gift from Preston when they were dating. A few irreplaceable photos. Her grandmother's ring. A burner phone she'd purchased months ago during a period of particular suspicion. She avoided taking anything traceable, no credit cards, no electronics that Preston might have installed tracking software on. She knew his security consciousness, his obsession with control. Any oversight now could be fatal. Gemma also knew they couldn't take her car, the Jaguar would be too recognizable, and Preston likely had it tracked. Instead, she called for a taxi to a car rental agency several neighborhoods away, where she used cash and her backup identification to rent a modest Honda that would blend into traffic. By the time they left, darkness had fallen over London. A fine mist hung in the air, shrouding the elegant townhouses of Kensington in ghostly halos of lamplight. Leo had fallen asleep in the back seat, Robin clutched tightly to his chest, while Gemma drove north, away from the only home her son had ever known. "Where are we going, Mommy?" Leo asked groggily when he woke an hour later. "To see an old friend," Gemma replied, checking the rearview mirror for the 1,000th time. "Someone I haven't talked to in a long time. Will they have biscuits? I'm hungry." Gemma smiled despite her fear. "I'm sure they will. And maybe hot chocolate too." As the city lights faded behind them and the M1 stretched ahead, Gemma contemplated the step she was about to take. Calling Rhys Morgan was either the smartest or the most desperate move possible. They hadn't spoken in nearly 8 years, not since her wedding day when their friendship had abruptly, mysteriously ended. At a service station, while Leo used the bathroom, Gemma finally made the call. "This is unexpected," came the deep voice on the other end, the soft Welsh accent instantly familiar despite the years of silence. "Rhys, I need help." Gemma's voice caught, the enormity of her situation suddenly overwhelming. "It's urgent and I can't explain everything now." A brief pause. "Where are you?" "Heading north on M1. Come to the farmhouse. I'll text the address." "Does anyone else know you'd contact me?" "No. We haven't exactly stayed in touch." Another pause. "We'll talk when you get here. Drive safely, Gem." The nickname, unused for years, sent an unexpected warmth through her chest despite everything. Rhys Morgan had been her research partner at the Victoria and Albert Museum, the brilliant conservator who'd worked alongside her before Preston had swept into her life. They'd been inseparable colleagues, exploring the subtle tells of forgeries, developing new authentication techniques, challenging each other intellectually in ways that made them the envy of the conservation department. And there had been something more, something unspoken but undeniable. Something that Preston had immediately recognized as a threat. By the time Gemma and Leo reached the Yorkshire Dales, dawn was breaking over the misty hills. Leo had fallen asleep again, and Gemma herself was fighting exhaustion. The adrenaline that had carried her through the night was waning, replaced by the cold reality of what she had done. She had abandoned her home, her security, her life. Because of a threat that seemed almost unbelievable in the pale morning light. But then she remembered Natalia's letter, the cold calculation in Preston's eyes, and knew she had made the only possible choice. The farmhouse appeared around a bend in the narrow country lane, a stone cottage with climbing roses and a slate roof, smoke curling from the chimney. It looked like something from a fairy tale, nestled against the backdrop of rolling hills and dry stone walls. As Gemma parked beside an old Land Rover, the front door opened. Rhys Morgan stood in the doorway, taller than she remembered, his dark hair now threaded with silver at the temples, his face more weathered but his green eyes just as piercing. "You look exhausted," he said simply, then his gaze shifted to Leo, who was rubbing sleep from his eyes in the back seat. A smile softened his features. "And this must be the young man I've heard about. Secret agents need breakfast, I think." Inside, the cottage was warm and surprisingly elegant, walls lined with bookshelves, conservation tools organized neatly in an adjoining studio, and large windows overlooking the Dales. While Rhys prepared pancakes shaped like animals that delighted Leo, Gemma sank into a chair at the kitchen table, the weight of the past 12 hours finally hitting her. "Leo, would you like to see my workshop?" Rhys asked after breakfast. "I'm restoring a very old book with pictures of dragons that might interest a castle expert." Once Leo was happily examining the illuminated manuscript under Rhys's assistant supervision, Rhys joined Gemma in the small library adjoining the kitchen. He poured 2 mugs of strong coffee and sat across from her at a table covered with art reference books. "Start from the beginning," he said gently. And so she did. The growing suspicions. The Bellini that didn't feel right. The discovery in Preston's study. The threats against Leo. With each revelation, Rhys's expression darkened, though he didn't interrupt. "The Bellini isn't the only one," she concluded, her voice hoarse from talking. "They've been laundering stolen artifacts through charitable donations to museums for years. Preston uses my former reputation to help authenticate them. And the Kozlovs, they're not just wealthy collectors. They're dangerous people with connections to organized crime." Rhys was quiet for a long moment. "I suspected something wasn't right. The Petrov donation last year at the National Gallery, the provenance seemed too convenient." "You were investigating him?" Gemma asked, surprised. "Not officially. But in conservation circles, there were whispers. Too many discovered masterpieces with paper-thin histories. He hesitated, running a hand through his silver-streaked hair. I tried to warn you, Gem. Before the wedding. The memory surfaced, Reese attempting to talk to her at the rehearsal dinner, Preston interrupting, their friendship cooling immediately after. I thought you were jealous, she admitted. Preston implied. That I wanted more than friendship. Reese smiled ruefully. He wasn't entirely wrong, but that wasn't why I tried to warn you. I'd connected some disturbing dots about his gallery's acquisitions, particularly those with Russian provenances. Before Gemma could respond, her burner phone chimed with a news alert she'd set up, breaking, priceless Bellini masterpiece stolen from Meridian Gallery. She showed the phone to Reese. He's covering his tracks. Making it disappear before anyone can examine it too closely. And looking for you, Reese added grimly. We need to secure evidence before approaching authorities. Preston's connections run deep in the art world, possibly into law enforcement. I know someone we can trust, Fiona Harlow at Art Crimes. We worked together on the Madrid case before I met Preston. But I'm afraid to contact her directly. Preston monitors everything. I can reach out through secure channels, Reese offered. But first, you need rest. You've been up all night, and you can't make clear decisions when you're exhausted. As if on cue, Leo appeared in the doorway. Mommy, Reese has a tree that's perfect for a fortress. Can we stay here long? Enough to build one? Please. Gemma met Reese's eyes over her son's head, a silent question passing between them. You're welcome as long as needed, Reese answered both of them. The studio has excellent security, and few people know about this place. While Reese showed Leo around the property, Gemma took a hot shower in the guest bathroom, trying to wash away the fear and tension of the past 24 hours. The guest room was simple but comfortable, a double bed with a handmade quilt, watercolor landscapes on the walls, and a small desk beneath a window overlooking a garden. It was as she was changing into clothes Reese had lent her, an oversized sweater and track pants that smelled faintly of his sandalwood soap, that she truly processed what she'd done. She'd run away with her son. Abandoned her home, her possessions, her identity. Because of a threat written in elegant cursive on Kozlov's stationery. What if she'd overreacted? What if Preston hadn't meant to endanger them? But then she remembered the coldness in his eyes when he'd caught her in his study. The calculation. The barely concealed fury. And the contingencies folder with its doctored photos and detailed plans to discredit her. No, she hadn't overreacted. If anything, she might have waited too long to run. When exhaustion finally claimed her, Gemma fell into a deep sleep, dreamless and healing. She woke to the sound of laughter drifting through the open window, Leo's high-pitched giggles and Reese's deeper chuckle. From her window, she could see them in the garden, examining something in Reese's cupped hands, a toad or frog, judging by Leo's delighted expression. It struck her how natural they looked together. How easily Reese had stepped into the role of friend and protector to a child he'd just met. How different from Preston's stilted interactions with their son, always tinged with expectation and judgment. That night, after settling Leo in a bedroom filled with books about art restoration, Reese had apparently maintained his passion for teaching. Gemma found herself in the farmhouse's cozy library. Rain pattered against leaded glass windows as she examined Reese's research on suspected forgeries. You've been tracking this for years, she murmured, tracing connections he'd mapped between certain dealers, collectors, and suddenly discovered masterpieces. It became something of an obsession, Reese admitted, pouring them both whiskey. Especially after you left the field. Your authentication work was legendary, Gem. When Preston started leveraging your reputation while keeping you away from actual authentication work. I let him, she said quietly. I convinced myself I was supporting his career while raising Leo. But he was systematically isolating me from my expertise, from my instincts. She took a long sip of the amber liquid. I stopped trusting myself. Yet here you are, Reese said, his gaze warming her more than the whiskey. The Gemma I knew is still there, the one who could spot a forgery from across a crowded gallery and who once confronted the director of the Louvre over a misattributed Vermeer. She laughed softly at the memory. He never forgave me. But you were right, Reese said simply. The validation, something Preston had subtly withdrawn over years of marriage, felt like oxygen to starving lungs. I need to get into Preston's secure server, she said, refocusing on the problem at hand. He keeps digital records of everything, transactions, clients, sources. If we can access those files, we'll have evidence of the entire operation. I might know someone who can help with that, Reese replied. A former student who specializes in digital art preservation and has additional skills. The next morning brought Mira Jean, a brilliant young woman with quick eyes and a no-nonsense manner. She had been Risa's most promising conservation student before discovering her passion for digital preservation and cybersecurity. Art thieves have gone digital, she explained, setting up her equipment in Risa's studio. So we need digital tools to catch them. While Mira worked on accessing Preston's cloud storage, Gemma focused on organizing the evidence she'd already gathered. But her concentration was broken when her burner phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. I know what you took. Return everything or I release the Brighton photos. Her blood ran cold. The Brighton photos were from a conservation conference 3 years ago when Preston had orchestrated compromising photos of Gemma with a museum director, pictures that appeared to show an affair but were actually innocent moments manipulated through careful editing. He'd shown them to her afterward, claiming he'd protected her from their release. Now she understood, they weren't protection but insurance. He's always planned for contingencies, she told Reese, showing him the text. He has material he can use to discredit me if I come forward. Risa's face hardened. Manipulative bastard. But it proves he's worried about what you might have. We need to move faster, Gemma agreed. And I need to contact Fiona before Preston does. Through Risa's secure channels, they arranged to meet Inspector Fiona Harlow at a small pub in Thirsk, a market town far enough from both London and the farmhouse to be safely neutral. Leo would stay with Mira at the farmhouse, continuing what he now enthusiastically called his secret agent training. Be good for Mira, Gemma instructed as she kissed her son goodbye. Remember our rules about staying inside and not answering the phone or door. I know, Mommy, Leo said seriously. Secret agent rule number 1, maintain your cover. The pub was quiet for a Tuesday afternoon, with only a few locals nursing pints at the bar. Fiona Harlow arrived looking exactly as Gemma remembered, tall, with steel-gray hair cut in a practical bob, sharp eyes missing nothing. Her cautious professionalism melted into concern as Gemma presented their preliminary evidence. This reaches beyond national boundaries, Fiona noted, reviewing the photos and Myra's initial findings. The Kozlov connection suggests Russian organized crime, and these transactions point to laundered money from at least 3 countries. Preston is planning something big, Gemma added. Before I left, I overheard him discussing a collection coming through Prague next month, something significant enough that Natalia's father is personally involved. Fiona's expression grew serious. We've been monitoring unusual movement of certain artifacts from Eastern European museums. Items are being secretly replaced with forgeries, with the originals disappearing into private collections. Cultural theft on a massive scale, Reese murmured. We'll need your formal statement, Fiona told Gemma. But I understand your concerns about Preston's influence and these compromising materials he claims to have. Let me arrange protective custody while we build the case. No, Gemma said firmly. Leo needs stability, not safe houses and constant movement. And I need to help build this case. I know Preston's methods, his contacts, how he thinks. After extensive negotiation, they agreed on a compromise. Gemma and Leo would remain at Risa's farmhouse with discreet protection while she worked with Fiona's team to gather conclusive evidence. I've spent years letting Preston make me doubt my expertise, my instincts, Gemma said as they left the pub. I won't let fear keep me from fighting back now. If you've ever had to rebuild yourself after someone tried to tear you down, hit that like button now. And if you believe in standing up against powerful people who abuse their position, subscribe to our channel for more stories of courage and resilience. Days turned into weeks as they built their case. Leo thrived in the countryside, developing a shadow conservation department in the barn where he restored broken toys under Reese's patient guidance. Gemma found herself rediscovering her own expertise, analyzing authentication methods used on suspected forgeries while reconnecting with her former professional network through secure channels. With Myra's help, they gradually gained access to fragments of Preston's digital empire. What they found exceeded even Gemma's worst suspicions. The forgery operation wasn't just about profits, it was about power and control. Wealthy collectors who purchased the stolen artifacts became unwitting participants in criminal activity, vulnerable to blackmail. Museum directors who accepted suspicious donations could be pressured for favors. Art experts who authenticated forgeries became compromised, their professional reputations held hostage. "It's genius," in a horrifying way, Myra said one evening as they reviewed the evidence. "Preston doesn't just sell art, he sells influence. And the Kozlovs provide the muscle when influence isn't enough," Reese added grimly. Their investigation revealed that several art experts who had questioned Meridian Gallery acquisitions had suffered mysterious professional setbacks. One promising curator had been accused of sexual harassment. Another had been caught with drugs in his apartment, drugs he swore weren't his. A third had simply disappeared while on vacation in Montenegro, his body washing up weeks later in what local police ruled an accidental drowning. "This is what would have happened to me," Gemma realized. "If I'd gone public with my concerns about the Bellini without evidence." "Or worse," Reese said quietly, glancing toward the garden where Leo was playing. "You made the right choice to run." One evening, as spring sunshine lingered over the dales, Gemma found Reese teaching Leo how to mix conservation-grade pigments in the studio. Just like the Renaissance masters, Reese was explaining. They made their paints from natural materials, minerals, plants, even insects for certain reds. "Gross." Leo giggled, carefully grinding blue stone in a mortar. "That's lapis lazuli," Gemma noted, leaning against the doorframe. "More precious than gold during the Renaissance." "Mommy. Reese says I have a good eye, just like you." Something tightened in Gemma's chest as she watched them, her son's uninhibited joy and Reese's gentle instruction creating a tableau of what might have been in another life. If she'd recognized Preston's manipulation earlier. If she'd trusted her instincts about the man she'd chosen instead of the man she'd pushed away. Later, with Leo asleep upstairs, she found Reese in the garden, contemplating the sunset that painted the dales in gold and amber. "You're remarkable with him," she said softly. "He's easy to be remarkable with," Reese replied. "Brilliant mind, endless curiosity, much like his mother." "I've been thinking about what happens after," she admitted. "When this case breaks open, when Preston is exposed. Leo's world will be shattered. Everything he knows about his father." "Children are resilient," Reese said. "Especially when they're loved and told the truth in ways they can understand." "And what about me?" The question slipped out before she could reconsider. Reese turned to her, his expression open in the fading light. "What about you, Gem? Am I resilient enough to rebuild completely? To trust my instincts again? To trust anyone again?" His hand found hers in the gathering dusk. "You already are rebuilding. Every decision since you walked away has been an act of reclamation." She looked down at their intertwined fingers. "I didn't just lose my career when I married Preston. I lost myself, my certainty, my voice." She met his gaze. "And I lost you." "I'm right here," he said simply. "I've always been here." The kiss was gentle, tentative, a question rather than a demand, so unlike Preston's calculated affection. When they separated, Gemma felt something long dormant awakening inside her, possibility. "I should have fought for you," Reese whispered. "When Preston came along, I should have told you how I felt instead of stepping aside." "And I should have seen what was happening," Gemma replied. How he was isolating me, undermining me. But we can't change the past. No. But we can decide what happens next. The breakthrough in their case came unexpectedly through Leo. While playing in Reese's library, he discovered a hidden compartment in an antique desk, a secret drawer containing conservation notes from the previous owner. Inspired, he began asking innocent questions about the secret drawers in their London home. Daddy's desk has one too, behind the big drawer with his special pens, Leo explained over dinner. That's where he keeps his special book with all the paintings. Gemma exchanged a startled look with Reese. A catalog? Did you ever see inside this special book? Leo nodded, his mouth full of shepherd's pie. He swallowed before answering, once when he was showing Uncle Mikhail. It had pictures of paintings and numbers and names. Daddy got very angry when he saw me watching. Mikhail Kozlov, Reese murmured. Natalia's brother. That night, after Leo was asleep, Gemma, Reese, and Mira held an emergency meeting with Fiona via secure video call. A physical ledger would be the smoking gun we need, Fiona said. Especially with the Kozlov connection documented. I can get a warrant to search specifically for this hidden drawer and book. But we need to move quickly, Gemma insisted. If Preston suspects what Leo has told us, he might destroy the evidence. Or worse, Reese added. We've seen what happens to people who threaten this operation. Fiona's expression was grim. I'll expedite the warrant. In the meantime, increase security at the farmhouse. I don't like that Preston's been quiet lately. The warrant came through the following day, allowing Fiona's team to search Preston's office specifically for the hidden ledger. By evening, Fiona called with news. We found it, exactly where Leo described. The ledger contains details of every forgery, every stolen original, every bribe and payoff. And there's more, plans for the Prague collection. They're planning to replace medieval manuscripts in the National Library with forgeries, then sell the originals to private collectors. When? Gemma asked. 3 days from now. We're coordinating with Czech authorities for simultaneous raids. After the call, Gemma sat in the farmhouse kitchen, a strange sense of unreality washing over her. After weeks of fear and uncertainty, the end was in sight. Preston would be arrested. The Kozlovs would face international charges. The art world would be rocked by the scandal. What happens to us now, she wondered aloud. Reese, who had been making tea, placed a steaming mug before her. That depends on what you want, Gem. You can rebuild your career, your expertise has been crucial to this case. Museums will be desperately seeking authentic authentication after this scandal breaks. And Leo? How do I explain to him that his father is a criminal? That everything we had was built on lies? With honesty, appropriate to his age, Reese said, sitting beside her. And by showing him that integrity matters more than appearances. Gemma sipped her tea, contemplating the future that was slowly taking shape. A future without Preston's controlling presence. Without the constant performance of being the perfect wife, the perfect hostess. A future where she could reclaim her expertise, her voice. And perhaps, she thought, glancing at Reese as he checked the security system before bed, a future that included second chances at things she'd once surrendered. If you believe in the power of reclaiming your voice after someone has silenced you, give this video a like. And for more stories about fighting back against those who abuse their power, subscribe and hit the notification bell so you don't miss our next powerful story. The morning of the coordinated raids dawned crisp and clear over the Yorkshire Dales. Gemma stood at the farmhouse window, watching the first golden rays illuminate the misty hills. 3 weeks had passed since she'd fled London with Leo, 3 weeks of building evidence against the man she'd once loved. Today would change everything. Couldn't sleep either. Reese appeared in the doorway, 2 steaming mugs of coffee in his hands. Not really. She accepted the coffee gratefully. I keep thinking about Preston's face when they arrest him. Will he be shocked? Angry? Or has he been expecting this all along? Men like Preston always believe they're untouchable, Reese said. That's their weakness. They stood in companionable silence, watching the day brighten. Gemma was struck by how comfortable this had become, these quiet moments with Reese, the easy understanding between them that required no performance, no careful calibration of her words or expressions. Fiona called, Reese said finally. The operation is scheduled for noon. They'll move simultaneously in London, Prague, and Moscow. And we stay here, Gemma confirmed, trying to keep the frustration from her voice. She understood the logic. She and Leo needed to remain safe until Preston and the Kozlovs were in custody, but part of her longed to see justice delivered firsthand. It's for the best, Gem. Especially for Leo. At the mention of her son, Gemma's resolve strengthened. Leo's well-being trumped any desire for personal vindication. These past weeks had been remarkably stable for him, despite the circumstances. He'd flourished under Reese's patient mentorship, developing a genuine interest in art conservation that went beyond his initial enthusiasm for their spy mission. I should wake him, Gemma said. Keep his routine normal today. But as she turned to leave, Reese caught her hand. Whatever happens today, Gem, you've already won. You protected Leo. You stood up to Preston. You reclaimed your voice. The simple truth of his words washed over her. She had won, in the ways that mattered most. Thank you, she whispered. For believing in me when I'd stopped believing in myself. His fingers tightened around hers. Always. The morning passed with excruciating slowness. Gemma kept Leo occupied with homeschooling lessons, while Reese pretended to focus on a manuscript restoration. Mira monitored communications from her makeshift command center in the studio, her expression growing increasingly tense as noon approached. At 11:30, Fiona called. The teams are in position, she reported. Preston is at the gallery, preparing for a private showing of the Prague collection preview. Natalia and Viktor Kozlov are with him. And the Czech operation? Gemma asked. Ready to intercept the shipment at the border. We've identified the forgeries already planted in the National Library. Be careful, Gemma cautioned. Preston always has contingency plans. After the call, Gemma found herself unable to sit still. She paced the farmhouse, checking windows, straightening books, anything to burn off the nervous energy coursing through her. At precisely noon, she, Reese, and Mira gathered around the secure tablet, watching the news feeds for any breaking stories about the raids. Nothing came. No news is good news, Reese reminded her. They'll keep it quiet until everyone's in custody. Another hour passed. Then another. Gemma's anxiety ratcheted higher with each passing minute. When her secure phone finally rang at 2:43 p.m., she nearly dropped it in her haste to answer. Gemma? Fiona's voice was tight. We have a problem. The world seemed to stop. What happened? Preston wasn't at the gallery. Neither were the Kozlovs. They left minutes before we arrived. How? You had the place under surveillance. There's a tunnel system beneath the gallery, connects to 3 buildings over. CCTV shows them leaving through a bookshop on Regent Street. Fiona's frustration was palpable. He knew we were coming. Cold dread settled in Gemma's stomach. The Prague operation. Intercepted successfully. We recovered all the original manuscripts and arrested 3 couriers. But Preston, Natalia, and Viktor are in the wind. After the call, Gemma sank onto the sofa, her mind racing. He knew, she whispered. Somehow, he knew. Reese sat beside her, his expression grave. Is there anyone else who knew about today's raids? Anyone who might have warned him? Only the core team at Art Crimes. Fiona's most trusted people. Gemma ran her hands through her hair. Unless. Unless what? Unless he was watching for exactly this kind of movement. Preston always prepares for every contingency. He probably had systems in place to alert him if certain files were accessed or if law enforcement started showing unusual interest in his operations. Mira looked up from her computer. Or someone could have been compromised. You said yourself that Preston collects leverage on people. What if he had something on someone in Fiona's team? The implications were chilling. If Preston had eyes within art crimes, nowhere was truly safe. We need to move, Reese said decisively. If Preston escaped the raids, finding you and Leo will be his top priority. Where can we go? Gemma asked. If he has connections in law enforcement. I have a place, Mira offered. A cottage on the North York moors. It's off the grid, no digital footprint. My grandfather left it to me, but it's not in my name. It's registered to a shell company I created for privacy. How soon can we leave? Reese asked. 20 minutes. I'll need to secure our equipment and wipe any traces from here. Gemma went upstairs to find Leo, who was reading in his bedroom, blissfully unaware of the danger closing in. Leo, darling, we need to go on another adventure, she said, keeping her voice light despite her racing heart. Another secret mission? He asked, closing his book. Exactly. And we need to pack quickly, just like before. As they gathered their few belongings, Gemma marveled at her son's resilience. In just 3 weeks, he'd adapted to their nomadic existence with remarkable flexibility. But how many more disruptions could he endure before it began to affect him? Children needed stability, routine, a sense of safety. Everything that was now in jeopardy. They left the farmhouse in Myra's nondescript van, taking a circuitous route through the dales. Reese drove, his eyes constantly checking the rearview mirror, while Mira monitored police communications on her laptop. Gemma kept Leo occupied with I Spy games, determined to maintain a sense of normalcy despite the tension crackling through the vehicle. The cottage on the moors was even more remote than the farmhouse, a stone structure nestled against a hillside, surrounded by heather and gorse. The nearest neighbor was over 2 miles away, and the only access was via a rutted track that looked barely navigable. It's perfect, Gemma said as they unloaded their essential supplies. How long can we stay? As long as needed, Mira replied. It's stocked with enough provisions for a month, and there's a generator for power. Cell signal is spotty, but I have satellite communication equipment. As Leo explored the cottage's small rooms with the enthusiasm of a child on holiday, Gemma took Reese aside. What if they don't find Preston? What if he's already left the country? Then we adapt, Reese said simply. We keep you and Leo safe while Fiona works the international angle. Preston has too many high-profile connections to disappear completely. Someone will talk, eventually. And in the meantime, Leo can't live like this indefinitely, constantly moving, constantly hiding. Reese took her hands, his green eyes steady. One day at a time, Gem. That's all any of us can do right now. That night, after Leo was asleep in the cottage's small second bedroom, Gemma, Reese, and Mira gathered around the fireplace to assess their situation. Interpol has issued alerts for Preston and the Kozlovs, Mira reported, checking her secure communications. Their passports have been flagged, accounts frozen. The evidence from the ledger is damning, they can't just walk away from this. Unless they already had escape plans in place, Gemma said. Preston travels with multiple passports. He has property in countries without extradition treaties. And the Kozlovs have connections throughout Eastern Europe. But they've lost their operation, Reese pointed out. The Prague collection was intercepted. The gallery is being investigated. Their network is exposed. Even if they escape prosecution, their art theft empire is finished. Which makes them more dangerous, Gemma countered. They have nothing left to lose. The grim assessment hung in the air, underscored by the wind howling across the moors. Gemma wrapped her arms around herself, suddenly chilled despite the crackling fire. We should all try to rest, Reese suggested. Tomorrow we'll coordinate with Fiona, see what progress they've made. Mira retired to the small study she'd converted to a communications hub, while Gemma and Rhys remained by the fire, neither quite ready to face solitude with their thoughts. I keep thinking about what I missed, Gemma said softly. There must have been signs earlier, warnings I ignored because I wanted to believe in the life we were building. Don't do that to yourself, Rhys cautioned. Preston spent years constructing his facade, and he specifically targeted you because of your expertise. He needed your reputation to legitimize his operation. But I was trained to spot fakes, Rhys. That was my entire career. How did I not see through him? Because forgeries of people are more complex than forgeries of art, Rhys said gently. And because he manipulated your environment so gradually that each small change seemed reasonable. Gemma leaned back, staring into the flames. I remember the first time he suggested I take a step back from authentication work. It was after Leo was born. He framed it as allowing me more time with our son, a luxury his financial success could provide. Who argues against spending more time with their child? The best manipulators always couch their control in terms of caring, Rhys observed. Then came the subtle undermining. Questioning my assessments when I did consult. Bringing in other experts who always seemed to disagree with my conclusions. Eventually, I stopped offering opinions at all. She turned to face him. How did you see through him when I couldn't? Rhys was quiet for a moment. I had the advantage of distance. And I had something to compare him against. What do you mean? I knew the real Gemma, brilliant, confident, unflinching in her assessments. When I saw how you changed around him, how you second-guessed yourself, how your light seemed to dim, it felt wrong. But by then, you were already engaged, already pulled into his orbit. And I pushed you away, Gemma said softly. I let myself be pushed, Rhys corrected. I should have fought harder for the truth. For you. The raw honesty between them felt both painful and cleansing, like antiseptic on a long-infected wound. For years, Gemma had buried her doubts beneath the perfect facade of her marriage. Now, in this remote cottage with the wind raging outside, the truth was finally breaking free. We can't change the past, she said, echoing his words from days earlier. But we can decide what happens next. His hand found hers in the firelight, warm and steady. Whatever you decide, I'm here. No expectations, no pressure. Just here. The simple promise meant more than any elaborate declaration could have. In a world where everything had proven false, Rhys's steady presence was the one certainty she could cling to. The next morning brought a break in the case, though not the one they'd hoped for. Fiona called as they were having breakfast, her voice tense with controlled urgency. Victor Kozlov was found dead in a hotel suite in Paris, she reported. Apparent suicide, though French authorities are treating it as suspicious. My God, Gemma whispered. Was Natalia with him? No sign of her or Preston. The hotel staff report they checked in separately, and Victor was alone when housekeeping found him. This doesn't make sense, Rhys said, frowning. Victor Kozlov was the linchpin of their operation. The connection to Eastern European museums, the muscle behind the threats. Unless. Gemma's mind raced with possibilities. Unless there was a falling out. Preston and Natalia might have decided Victor was a liability. Or Victor decided to remove himself rather than face prosecution, Fiona suggested. His suicide note reportedly says, I cannot live with the disgrace. But something about this development felt wrong to Gemma. Victor Kozlov was notoriously ruthless, a man who had survived the collapse of the Soviet Union by being more brutal than his competitors. Suicide didn't fit his profile. After the call, Gemma shared her concerns with Rhys and Mira. This feels like misdirection. Something to occupy the authorities while Preston and Natalia establish their escape route. Or a message, Mira suggested grimly. A demonstration of what happens to those who threaten their operation. The implication was clear. If they could eliminate Victor, their own partner, what would they do to Gemma and Leo? Security around the cottage was tightened. Mira set up motion sensors along the approach road, and Reese established protocols for any excursions outside. Leo, sensing the increased tension, became quieter, clinging to Gemma more than usual. "Are the bad guys coming for us?" he asked that night as she tucked him into bed. The direct question caught Gemma off guard. She'd been careful to shield him from the danger, framing their movements as adventures rather than escapes. But children perceived more than adults gave them credit for. "Some people are angry with me because I discovered something they wanted to keep secret," she explained, choosing her words carefully. "But we have good people protecting us. Reese and Mira and Inspector Fiona. Is Daddy one of the bad guys?" Leo's voice was small, his amber eyes, so like her own, searching her face for truth. Gemma's heart constricted. She'd known this question would come eventually, but had hoped for more time to prepare. "Your father made some bad choices," she said gently. "He did things that weren't right, that hurt people." "Did he hurt you?" "Not physically," Gemma answered honestly. "But he lied to me, to many people. And when people discover that someone they love has been lying, it hurts inside." Leo nodded solemnly, processing this in his 7-year-old way. "Like when Jamie at school said he was my best friend but then told everyone my secrets." "Something like that," Gemma agreed, marveling at his ability to find relevant parallels. "Except the secrets your father kept were about breaking laws, not just playground rules." "Will I ever see him again?" The question hung in the air, weighted with implications Gemma wasn't sure Leo fully understood. How did you explain to a child that his father might be fleeing international arrest warrants? That he might have been involved in the death of his own business partner? "I don't know, sweetheart," she admitted finally. "That depends on many things, including choices your father makes now." Leo was quiet for a long moment, clutching Robin the fox to his chest. "I miss our house," he whispered. "But I like Reese. He doesn't make you sad like Daddy did." The simple observation stunned Gemma. She'd thought she'd hidden her unhappiness from Leo, maintained the perfect image of their family. But children saw the truth that adults tried to conceal. "Reese is a good friend," she said carefully. "He looks at you like the prince looks at Cinderella in my book," Leo continued, his observation disarmingly accurate. "All shiny in his eyes." Gemma felt heat rise to her cheeks. "Time to sleep now, love. Tomorrow we can help Reese with his new manuscript restoration if you like." After Leo fell asleep, Gemma found herself drawn back to the main room where Reese was poring over reports from Fiona's team. The firelight cast his profile in sharp relief, the strong line of his jaw, the silver threads at his temples, the concentration in his green eyes. Leo asked if his father was one of the bad guys, she said without preamble. Reese looked up, concern immediately replacing concentration. "What did you tell him?" "As much of the truth as I thought he could handle. That Preston made bad choices, broke laws, hurt people with his lies." She sank into the chair opposite him. "He also said you don't make me sad like Preston did." Something flickered across Reese's face, surprise, then a softening. "Children see more than we give them credit for. He said you look at me all shiny in your eyes, like the prince looks at Cinderella." Gemma couldn't help the small smile that formed despite the seriousness of their situation. Reese chuckled, a warm sound that filled the cottage. "Well, he's not wrong," he admitted. "Though I'd hope I'm a bit more substantial than a fairy tale prince." The moment of lightness was a welcome respite from the constant tension of the past days. But it was short-lived. Mira burst into the room, her face pale. "We have a problem," she announced. "Someone's been accessing Leo's school records. Trying to trace his most recent vaccination records, specifically." "Preston," Gemma breathed. It was a clever approach. Medical records were often overlooked in security protocols, but could provide valuable clues to a child's location. "I've inserted false trails," Mira continued. Made it look like requests were fulfilled with locations in Scotland and Wales. But we should assume he's actively searching and getting creative. The implication was clear. They couldn't stay in one place for long, even somewhere as remote as the moorland cottage. What about Fiona? Rhys asked. Can she provide official protection now? She's offering a safe house in London, Mira replied. Under 24-hour guard. Gemma shook her head. Too obvious. Preston knows I'd never go back to London voluntarily. He'd see it as a trap. What about abroad? Rhys suggested. I have connections at the Louvre Conservation Department. They might be willing to provide cover. Too complicated with Leo, Gemma countered. We'd need special documentation, and any official request could be tracked. They debated options late into the night, each suggestion revealing new vulnerabilities. By morning, exhaustion had settled over them like a fog, but no clear path forward had emerged. If you've ever felt trapped with impossible choices, with danger closing in from all sides, hit that like button. And if you want to know how Gemma will protect her son from a man who seems to anticipate her every move, subscribe now for the conclusion of this heart-stopping story. It was Leo who provided the breakthrough, unwittingly. Over breakfast, as the adults tried to mask their exhaustion and worry, he looked up from his cereal with a thoughtful expression. If we're hiding from Dad, why don't we go where he already looked? He asked, as if suggesting the most obvious solution in the world. What do you mean, sweetheart? Gemma asked. In hide and seek, the best place to hide is somewhere the seeker already checked. They never look in the same place twice. He demonstrated by moving his spoon under his napkin, then to his lap. See? You thought it was under the napkin, so you wouldn't look there again. The adults exchanged glances, a new possibility dawning. The farmhouse, Rhys said slowly. Preston would assume we'd never return there after abandoning it. Exactly, Mira agreed, warming to the idea. And we could set up additional security measures now that we know what we're dealing with. The logic was sound, but Gemma hesitated. It feels too obvious. Which is precisely why it might work, Rhys argued. Especially if we create diversions elsewhere. Mira could continue generating false trails through record searches. We could have Fiona leak information about possible sightings in other countries. By afternoon, the plan was in motion. Mira would return to the farmhouse first, ensuring it was secure and setting up enhanced protection systems. Gemma, Leo, and Rhys would follow after dark, taking an indirect route to avoid surveillance. As they packed the few belongings they'd brought to the cottage, Gemma found herself drawn to the window, watching Leo help Rhys load the van. The easy rapport between them twisted something in her heart, joy mingled with grief for what might have been if she'd made different choices years ago. He's good with Leo, Mira observed, joining her at the window. Natural. He is, Gemma agreed. Leo responds to him in ways he never did with Preston. More openness, less fear of judgment. And how do you respond to him? Mira asked with surprising directness. Gemma turned to the younger woman, startled by the personal question. But Myra's expression held no judgment, only genuine concern. I'm not sure I know how to trust my instincts anymore, Gemma admitted. After Preston, after being so completely deceived. Your instincts were never the problem, Mira said firmly. You knew something was wrong with the Bellini. You sensed the issues with Preston's business dealings. You protected Leo when the threat emerged. Your instincts are fine. It was your confidence in them that Preston undermined. The simple truth of this assessment hit Gemma with unexpected force. Mira was right. Her instincts had been warning her for years, she'd simply been conditioned to doubt them, to defer to Preston's judgment, to silence her own internal alarms. Thank you, she said softly. For that perspective. And for everything you've done for us. Mira shrugged, uncomfortable with the gratitude. Rhys gave me a chance when others wouldn't. I'm just returning the favor. She paused, then added, but for what it's worth, I've watched you both these past weeks. What's between you and Reese? It's real. Nothing like what you described with Preston. Before Gemma could respond, Leo came bounding up to the cottage, excitement written across his face. Reese says we're going back to the farmhouse. Can we finish the tree fortress when we get there? If it's safe to play outside, yes, Gemma promised, ruffling his curls. But remember, this is still part of our secret mission. All the same rules apply. The journey back to the farmhouse was tense, each mile bringing both relief and apprehension. They took multiple detours, changed vehicles twice, and maintained constant communication with Mira, who had arrived ahead of them to secure the property. All clear, she reported when they were 30 minutes out. I've swept for surveillance devices, set up motion detectors on all approaches, and established a secure perimeter. If anyone comes within half a mile, we'll know. They arrived well after midnight, exhaustion making every movement leaden. Leo had fallen asleep in the back seat, clutching Robin the fox. Reese carried him inside, laying him gently on the bed in the room that had become his during their first stay. Gemma tucked the blankets around him, pressing a kiss to his forehead, marveling yet again at his resilience. Downstairs, Mira showed them the security enhancements she'd implemented. I've set up a safe room in the root cellar, she explained. Steel-reinforced door, independent power supply, communication equipment, provisions for at least a week. If there's any threat, that's where you go first. You've thought of everything, Gemma said, impressed despite her exhaustion. Not everything, Mira admitted. But enough to buy us time if we need it. That night, Gemma slept fitfully, her dreams filled with shadowy figures and endless corridors. She woke at dawn, disoriented, before remembering where they were. The farmhouse. They had returned to the beginning, gambling that Preston would never expect such a move. The day passed quietly. Leo was delighted to be back in the familiar setting, immediately checking on the tree he'd selected for their fortress. Reese resumed work on his manuscript restoration, though Gemma noticed his attention remained divided, his eyes frequently scanning the surrounding countryside. Mira maintained her vigilant monitoring of communications and security systems. By evening, some of the tension had eased. They ate dinner in the farmhouse kitchen, almost like a normal family. Leo chattered about the improvements he planned for the tree fortress, while Reese suggested engineering solutions to his more ambitious ideas. Gemma found herself smiling despite everything, this glimpse of ordinary happiness amid extraordinary circumstances feeling like a precious gift. After Leo was asleep, Gemma joined Reese on the small porch overlooking the dales. The night was clear, stars scattered across the velvet sky in breathtaking profusion. I never saw stars like this in London, she murmured. Too much light pollution. One of the many reasons I left the city, Reese replied. That and the fact that the most beautiful thing I wanted to see there was no longer available for viewing. The gentle reference to their separation brought a flush to Gemma's cheeks, visible even in the dim porch light. You never told me why you left the VNA, she said. After my wedding, you just disappeared. Reese was quiet for a long moment. I couldn't stay, he finally admitted. Watching you with him, knowing what I suspected about his dealings, unable to protect you without seeming like the jealous friend. He shook his head. I took a restoration project in Edinburgh, then another in Paris. Eventually ended up here, where the quiet helped me focus on the work instead of what I'd lost. I'm sorry, Gemma whispered. For not listening when you tried to warn me. For choosing the fantasy Preston offered over the reality we had. You have nothing to apologize for, Reese said firmly. Preston is, a master manipulator. He targeted you specifically, Gem. Used your professional reputation to legitimize his operation, then systematically isolated you from anyone who might question it. Still, there were moments I knew something was wrong. The Bellini felt off from the moment I saw it. But I let him convince me I was rusty, that my instincts were faulty. And yet, when it really mattered, when Leo was threatened, you trusted those instincts implicitly. You ran. You protected what was most precious. His hand found hers in the darkness. That's what matters, Gem. Not the mistakes before, but the courage after. His words washed over her like a benediction, healing wounds she hadn't fully acknowledged. Yes, she had been deceived, manipulated, controlled. But when it mattered most, she had found the strength to break free. To protect her son. To reclaim her voice. The realization settled into her bones, a quiet certainty replacing the self-doubt that had plagued her for years. She was still Gemma Holloway, the brilliant authenticator who could spot a forgery from across a crowded gallery. Preston had obscured that woman, buried her beneath layers of insecurity and dependence, but he had never truly destroyed her. "Thank you," she said simply, turning to face Reese. "For seeing me when I couldn't see myself." His green eyes reflected the starlight, full of a warmth that had nothing to do with the mild spring night. "I've always seen you, Gem. Even when you were hidden, I knew you were there." The kiss that followed was different from their first, not a question but an answer. An affirmation of what they both now understood. Whatever came next, whatever dangers still lurked, they would face them together, eyes wide open. Inside the farmhouse, Myra's equipment beeped softly. A notification. A development in the case that would change everything once again. The search for Preston Holloway and Natalia Kozlov had entered a new and deadly phase. The notification that had pinged on Myra's equipment sent them rushing back inside, the moment of peace shattered. Myra's face was illuminated by the blue glow of her monitors, her expression grim. Natalia Kozlov was just spotted at Heathrow Airport, she reported. Facial recognition picked her up at a private terminal. "Is she leaving the country?" Gemma asked, her heart racing. "No." Myra's fingers flew across the keyboard, pulling up additional information. According to this, she arrived on a private jet registered to a shell company in Cyprus. She's coming back to England. Why would she risk returning when there are international warrants for her arrest? Reese wondered. The answer crystallized in Gemma's mind with terrible clarity. Because she has unfinished business here. Victor's death wasn't a suicide or a falling out. It was part of a plan. What plan? Mira asked. Victor was the public face of their operation, the one with known criminal connections. With him dead, apparently by suicide with a convenient note confessing to everything, Preston and Natalia might hope to muddy the waters, make it seem like Victor was solely responsible. And if they can eliminate the primary witness against them. Reese didn't need to finish the thought. The threat to Gemma and Leo was implicit. "We need to contact Fiona immediately," Gemma said. "If Natalia's in the country, Preston won't be far behind." But Mira was already shaking her head, frustration evident. "Communications are down. All channels. I can't get a signal out." "That's not possible," Reese said, moving to check the equipment. "You have multiple redundant systems." All being actively jammed, Mira confirmed after running diagnostics. Someone's using military-grade equipment within range of the farmhouse. The implication hit them like a physical blow. They weren't just being hunted. They were being surrounded. "The safe room," Gemma said immediately, thinking of Leo asleep upstairs. "We need to get Leo to the safe room now." Reese was already moving toward the stairs when the first window shattered. The distinctive crack of a rifle shot followed a split second later, confirming this was no accident. Mira dropped to the floor, dragging her essential equipment with her. "Go," she shouted. "Get Leo. I'll try to get an emergency signal out." Gemma and Reese raced upstairs, keeping low. Another shot splintered the banister just above their heads. In Leo's room, they found him awake, eyes wide with fear, clutching Robin the fox. "Mommy?" His voice was small, trembling. "It's all right, sweetheart," Gemma said with a calmness she didn't feel. "Remember the special hiding place Mira showed you? We need to go there right now." Reese scooped Leo into his arms. "Hold on tight, buddy. We're going to move very fast and very quiet, like real spies. Can you do that? Leo nodded against Reese's shoulder, too frightened for words. They moved back toward the stairs, but another shot splintered the doorframe beside them. The back stairs, Reese said, changing direction. Through the studio. The farmhouse's layout, which had once seemed charming with its warren of additions built over centuries, now provided vital cover as they navigated to the narrow servants' staircase that led from the upstairs studio directly to the kitchen. From there, the root cellar entrance was just steps away. More shots rang out as they descended, the sound of breaking glass and splintering wood following them. In the kitchen, they found Mira frantically working on a small device. Emergency beacon, she explained tersely. If I can get it outside the jamming radius, it might reach Fiona. The safe room first, Reese insisted. All of us. Together they descended into the root cellar, Reese pulling the heavy steel door closed behind them. The space was small but efficiently organized, emergency provisions, communication equipment, even a small cot where Leo could rest. Reese immediately moved to the monitoring system, bringing up exterior camera feeds on a small screen. At least 4 figures approaching from the north perimeter, he reported. Professional equipment, tactical movement patterns. Mercenaries, Mira said. Probably ex-military hired through the Kozlov's connections. And they're just the advance team, Gemma added, her voice steady despite the fear clutching at her throat. Preston and Natalia will stay back until they're sure it's safe. Leo clung to Gemma's side, his small body trembling. Are these the bad people you told me about? He whispered. Yes, sweetheart, Gemma answered honestly. But remember what I said, we have good people protecting us too. She stroked his curls, trying to project a confidence she didn't entirely feel. How long can we stay in here? She asked Reese quietly. Air recycler is good for 72 hours. Water and provisions for a week. But if they have military-grade jamming equipment, they might have other capabilities we haven't anticipated. Mira was examining the construction of the safe room. The door is reinforced steel, but the surrounding foundation is old stone. With the right equipment, they could breach it. So we're trapped, Gemma concluded. Not necessarily. Reese pointed to a narrow tunnel leading off from the main cellar. That connects to the old well house about 50 meters from the main building. It was used during Prohibition to move spirits without detection. I sealed the exterior entrance when I bought the place, but it could be opened from inside in an emergency. That's our escape route, Gemma said immediately. If we can get to the well house, we might be able to slip past their perimeter. It's risky, Mira warned. They'll have the property surrounded. And we'd be exposed crossing from the well house to the tree line. Riskier than waiting here to be found. Gemma countered. Above them, they could hear the sounds of the intruders entering the farmhouse, heavy footsteps, furniture being overturned, doors being kicked in. The methodical destruction of the peaceful home that had sheltered them. I need to get this beacon activated, Mira said, holding up the small device she'd been working on. It's our only chance of getting help. I'll go, Reese volunteered. You stay with Gemma and Leo. I know these grounds better than anyone, I can get to the perimeter and back. No, Gemma said firmly. We stay together. All of us. Leo needs both of us right now. The sound of furniture being dragged across the floor above them emphasized the urgency of their situation. The mercenaries were searching systematically, and it wouldn't take them long to discover the root cellar entrance. The tunnel, Reese decided. All of us. Now. Moving quickly, they gathered essential supplies, water, Myra's communication equipment, a first aid kit. Gemma helped Leo into a warm jacket, whispering reassurances as she zipped it up. We're going on another part of our mission, she told him. Through a secret tunnel just like spies use. We need to be very quiet and very brave. Leo nodded, clutching Robin tighter. I can be brave, he whispered back. The tunnel was narrow and damp, requiring them to move in single file, crouched low. Reese led the way, a small flashlight illuminating the rough-hewn passage. Leo followed, then Gemma, with Mira bringing up the rear. The earthen walls pressed close around them, the air thick with the scent of soil and stone. Almost there, Reese encouraged as they approached a wooden door set into the tunnel wall. The well house is just beyond. Once we're inside, we'll need to assess the situation before moving further. He eased the door open, revealing a small stone structure. Ancient well-drawing equipment occupied most of the space, though it was clearly non-functional now. Narrow windows, more like arrow slits, provided limited visibility of the surrounding area. Reese peered cautiously through one of these openings. 2 guards at the tree line, he reported. Facing outward, though. They're expecting us to try to break in, not out. What's the plan? Gemma asked, keeping her voice low despite the distance from the main house. The eastern perimeter looks least guarded, Reese said after checking all viewpoints. If we can reach those trees, there's a ravine beyond that leads down to the road. We might be able to find help at the village. I need to activate the beacon first, Mira insisted. It won't work from inside these stone walls. I'll create a diversion, Reese decided. Draw their attention to the western side. While they're distracted, you 3 make for the trees to the east. No, Gemma said immediately. That's too dangerous. We don't have many options, Gem. Reese's voice was gentle but firm. Someone needs to draw their attention, and I know this property better than any of you. Then I'll do it, Gemma countered. I'm the one they want. Leo will go with you and Mira. Absolutely not, Reese and Mira said simultaneously. Mom, I want to stay with you, Leo added, his small voice breaking Gemma's heart. Before they could resolve the impasse, a new sound reached them, the rhythmic thud of helicopter rotors approaching. Is it help? Leo asked hopefully. Mira shook her head after checking a small device. Wrong frequency pattern for police or medical. This is private. Preston, Gemma breathed. He's arriving now that his mercenaries have secured the property. The helicopter sounds grew louder, then settled into a hovering pattern somewhere near the farmhouse. Through the narrow windows, they could see several of the guards moving toward the main building, presumably to escort their employer. This might be our chance, Reese said. They're concentrating forces around the landing zone. The eastern perimeter will be thinner. I still need to activate the beacon, Mira reminded them. Can you do it from the ravine? Gemma asked. Once we're in the trees. Mira considered this. Possibly. It would have better chance of transmission from higher ground, but the ravine might be outside their jamming radius. Then we move now, Reese decided. All of us, together. While they're distracted by the helicopter. They eased open the well house door, the ancient hinges protesting slightly. The evening air was cool against their faces after the closeness of the tunnel. Reese went first, scanning the area carefully before motioning for the others to follow. They moved in a tight group, keeping low among the tall grass that surrounded the well house. They had covered perhaps half the distance to the tree line when a shout went up from the direction of the farmhouse. They'd been spotted. Run! Reese urged, pushing them forward as the first shots rang out. Gemma scooped Leo into her arms, his weight nothing against the surge of adrenaline. They sprinted for the trees, bullets kicking up dirt around their feet. Mira stumbled once but recovered quickly, clutching her precious equipment. They reached the tree line just as a bullet splintered bark inches from Gemma's head. Reese pulled them deeper into the cover of the forest, following a barely visible path that wound toward the ravine. Behind them, they could hear the sounds of pursuit, shouted commands, breaking branches, the occasional crack of a rifle. Keep moving, Reese urged as they half-slid down the steep bank of the ravine. There's an old gamekeeper's hut about half a mile downstream. We can regroup there. Leo was trembling violently in Gemma's arms, but he remained silent, understanding instinctively that noise could betray their position. His small face was buried against her shoulder, Robin the fox crushed between them. The ravine provided better cover, its steep sides and the shallow stream at its bottom making pursuit more difficult. They moved as quickly as possible over the uneven terrain, each step taking them further from the farmhouse, from Preston and his mercenaries. After what seemed like an eternity but was probably only 20 minutes, the gamekeeper's hut appeared, a small stone structure half hidden by vegetation. Rhys ushered them inside, quickly checking that it was secure before allowing them to rest. "Mira, can you activate the beacon now?" he asked as soon as they'd caught their breath. She nodded, moving to the small window to check their position. "We should be outside their jamming radius here." "I'll try." While Mira worked on the beacon, Gemma attended to Leo, checking him for injuries and offering quiet reassurance. The little boy was pale but composed, displaying a bravery that made Gemma's heart swell with both pride and sorrow. No child should have to be this brave. "You did so well," she told him, brushing his curls back from his forehead. "The best secret agent ever." "Are the bad men still coming?" he asked softly. "Probably," she answered honestly. "But we have a good head start, and Mira is sending for help." "Signal sent," Mira confirmed, joining them. "If Fiona's team is monitoring emergency frequencies, they should pick it up." "And if they're not?" Gemma asked quietly, so Leo wouldn't hear. Myra's expression was grim. "Then we keep running until we find help." Rhys had been keeping watch at the window, his body tense with alertness. "No sign of pursuit yet, but they'll have trackers, possibly dogs. We need to move again soon." "Where to?" Gemma asked. "The village is still miles away." "There's a main road about 2 kilometers east," Rhys said. "If we can reach it, we might be able to flag down help or at least find transportation." "Wait," Mira interrupted, her head tilted as she listened intently. "Do you hear that?" They fell silent, straining to catch what had alerted her. At first, Gemma heard nothing beyond the soft gurgle of the stream outside and the rustle of leaves in the evening breeze. Then she caught it, the faint but distinctive sound of rotors, different from the helicopter that had brought Preston. "Police?" she asked hopefully. Mira checked her device again. "Yes. Emergency services frequency." They received the beacon. Relief washed over them, though Rhys remained cautious. "We're not safe yet," he warned. "Preston's team will hear them coming too. They might make a final push to find us before help arrives." As if confirming his fears, the sound of voices echoed down the ravine, men calling to each other, coordinating their search pattern. They were still distant, but moving in the right direction. "We need a defensible position," Rhys decided. "Somewhere to hold out until help reaches us." "What about there?" Leo pointed through the window to a rocky outcropping further down the ravine. The natural formation created a small cave-like space, accessible only from one direction. "Good eye, buddy," Rhys said, impressed. "That's perfect." They moved quickly, abandoning the hut for the more defensible position among the rocks. The space was tight but offered excellent cover and a clear view of the approach path. Rhys positioned himself at the entrance, a sturdy branch serving as a makeshift weapon. "Mira, can you communicate with the incoming helicopter?" Gemma asked. "I'm trying," she replied, working with her equipment. "There's interference, probably still some effect from Preston's jammers." The voices were growing closer, more focused. They had found the gamekeeper's hut and would soon discover their new hiding place. The helicopter sounds were also getting louder, but not quickly enough. Help would arrive too late. "Gemma," Rhys said softly, his eyes never leaving the path below, "if they find us before help arrives, I'll hold them off. You and Mira take Leo and go deeper into the ravine." "No," Gemma said fiercely. "We stay together. All of us." "Mom's right," Leo said unexpectedly, his small voice steady. In my spy books, the team always stays together. That's how they win. Despite everything, Reese smiled. Can't argue with that logic. The sound of approaching footsteps silenced their conversation. Through the narrow opening of their shelter, they could see two men moving cautiously along the ravine path, rifles at the ready. Behind them, more voices suggested additional forces were not far behind. They'll find us in minutes, Mira whispered. Then we need a new plan, Gemma said, her mind racing. Something they won't expect. An idea formed, desperate, risky, but potentially effective. Leo, she whispered, remember how you said the best hiding place is where someone already looked? He nodded, eyes wide. We're going to use that strategy again. Reese, if we create a distraction here, could you circle back to the well house? They won't expect us to return to the property. It's risky, he warned. They'll have left guards. Fewer than before, Gemma argued. Most are down here searching for us. And the helicopter is nearly here. Indeed, the sound of rotors was significantly louder now, suggesting help was minutes away. What kind of distraction? Mira asked. Gemma looked around their small shelter, her gaze landing on Myra's equipment. Can you make something noisy with that? Something that would draw attention. Mira considered her collection of devices. I can override the speaker on the emergency beacon. Create a high-pitched alarm that would echo down the ravine. Do it, Gemma decided. Set it to activate after we've had time to move. We'll split up, Mira and Leo will go deeper into the ravine toward the road, while Reese and I circle back to the well house. The helicopter will see us from above and realize there are two groups. I want to stay with you, Leo protested. Gemma knelt before her son, looking directly into his amber eyes. This is the most important part of the mission, Leo. I need you to protect Mira and help her reach the road. Can you do that for me? His small jaw set with determination. Yes. Robin and I will keep her safe. That's my brave boy. Gemma hugged him fiercely, trying to pour 7 years of love into one embrace. We'll find each other again very soon. I promise. While Mira prepared the distraction device, Gemma and Reese worked out their route. The return to the well house would be dangerous, exposed terrain, possible guards, but if they could reach it, they might be able to draw Preston into the open. He wants me, Gemma said. If he thinks I'm cornered in the well house, he'll come himself. And when he does, the helicopter will see him. It's too dangerous, Reese insisted. Let me go alone. No, Gemma was resolute. This ends tonight. Together. The plan set, they prepared to separate. Gemma held Leo one last time, memorizing the feel of his small body against hers, the scent of his hair, the trust in his eyes. I love you to the moon and back, she whispered. And all the way around the stars, he finished their familiar exchange. Mira activated the distraction device, setting it to trigger in exactly 3 minutes. They moved quickly, Mira and Leo slipping deeper into the ravine toward the road, while Gemma and Reese began the difficult climb back up the steep bank. They had just reached the top when the device activated, sending a piercing electronic wail echoing through the ravine. Instantly, the searching mercenaries converged on the sound, shouting to each other as they abandoned their systematic search pattern. Now, Reese urged, and they sprinted across the open ground toward the tree line. The return journey was faster, adrenaline and desperation lending speed to their movements. As they approached the property, they could see the helicopter hovering above the farmhouse, not police as they'd hoped, but a sleek private craft, presumably Preston's escape vehicle. There, Reese pointed to the well house, still seemingly unguarded. If we can reach it, we can use the tunnel to access the main house. Surprise them from inside. They moved cautiously through the trees, alert for any sign of guards. The property appeared strangely deserted, most forces having joined the search in the ravine. As they approached the well house, however, a lone figure stepped from the shadows, a woman, elegant even in tactical gear, a pistol held casually in her manicured hand. "Natalia," Gemma breathed. "Mrs. Holloway." Natalia Kozlov's Russian accent was barely detectable beneath layers of expensive education. "How convenient that you've decided to return. Preston will be so pleased." "Where is he?" Gemma asked, playing for time. Above them, the sound of another helicopter was growing louder, the police, finally arriving. "Preparing for our departure," Natalia replied. "We had hoped to conclude our business here quietly, but your unexpected resourcefulness has complicated matters." "You mean you hope to kill us and blame everything on Victor," Gemma said flatly. "Make it look like he was the mastermind who conveniently committed suicide out of guilt." Natalia's smile was cold. "A neat solution that would have allowed us to rebuild elsewhere. Now, I'm afraid, we must resort to less elegant measures." She raised her pistol, aiming directly at Gemma. "Preston will be disappointed to lose his leverage over you, but your son will serve the purpose just as well." Rage surged through Gemma at the casual threat to Leo. "You'll never find him," she snarled. "He's far from here, beyond your reach." "Children can always be found," Natalia said dismissively. "Particularly ones with such distinctive features. Those amber eyes are quite remarkable." Before Gemma could respond, a new voice joined the confrontation. "That's enough, Natalia." Preston Holloway emerged from the well house, impeccably dressed despite the circumstances. His handsome features were set in lines of irritation rather than concern, as if this entire situation were merely an inconvenient business setback rather than the collapse of his criminal empire. "Gemma," he greeted her, as though they were meeting at a gallery opening. "You've led us on quite a chase. Most impressive, especially with Leo in tow." "Leo is safe," Gemma said, holding her ground despite the terror clawing at her throat. "Beyond your reach." "Nothing is beyond my reach," Preston said simply. "A lesson you seem determined to learn the hard way." Above them, the police helicopter was now clearly visible, searchlights sweeping the property. Preston glanced up, his expression hardening. "Time to conclude this," he told Natalia. "Bring her. We'll use her to secure our exit." Natalia gestured with her pistol. "Move." Toward the helicopter. It was at that moment that Reese, who had been gradually shifting his position during the confrontation, made his move. He lunged at Natalia, knocking her arm upward as the pistol discharged. The bullet went wild, splintering wood from the well house roof. Preston reacted instantly, pulling a pistol of his own from beneath his tailored jacket. But Gemma was ready, years of suppressed rage focusing into one perfect moment of clarity. She launched herself at her husband, driving her shoulder into his midsection with all the force she could muster. He staggered backward, surprised by the ferocity of her attack. His pistol discharged, the shot going wide, before Gemma knocked it from his hand with a move she'd learned in self-defense classes years ago, classes Preston had mocked as unnecessary. "You never did respect me," she told him, backing him against the well house wall. "My expertise, my instincts, my strength. That was your mistake." "Your mistake," Preston countered, his composure finally cracking, "was thinking you could beat me. I built an empire while you played house. I outsmarted international authorities while you arranged dinner parties. You're nothing without me, Gemma." "No, Preston," she said calmly. "I was nothing with you. You made sure of that. But I'm reclaiming everything you took from me, starting tonight." The police helicopter was directly overhead now, its searchlight illuminating the scene in harsh white light. Beyond the well house, shouts indicated that authorities were securing the farmhouse and apprehending the mercenaries returning from the ravine. Reese had subdued Natalia, using his belt to bind her hands behind her back. "It's over, Preston," he called. "The police have the ledger, the digital records, everything. Victor's death is already being reinvestigated as a murder. There's nowhere left to run." Preston's eyes darted between them, calculating even now. There's always somewhere to run, he said. That's what money and power provide. Options. With surprising speed, he shoved Gemma aside and lunged toward the open well-house door, presumably seeking the tunnel entrance. But Gemma had anticipated this move. As he passed, she stuck out her foot, sending him sprawling onto the stone floor. Before he could recover, police officers swarmed the area, weapons drawn, shouting commands. In moments, both Preston and Natalia were in custody, being led toward waiting vehicles. As Preston passed Gemma, he paused. "This isn't over," he hissed. "I still have the Brighton photos. Your reputation will be destroyed." Gemma looked at the man she had once loved, seeing him clearly for perhaps the first time. "My reputation is built on substance, Preston, not appearances. Something you never understood." Then he was gone, escorted firmly away by officers who showed no deference to his wealth or status. Gemma. Fiona Harlow pushed through the gathering of police personnel, her face lined with concern. "Are you all right? Where's Leo?" "With Mira," Gemma explained quickly. "Heading for the road east of here. They need to be found immediately." Fiona barked orders into her radio, directing search teams to the specified area. Then she turned back to Gemma and Reese, her expression grim but satisfied. "We've got them," she confirmed. "Preston, Natalia, most of their network. The evidence from the ledger was damning enough, but the digital records Mira helped us access have blown this wide open. International art theft, forgery, money laundering, blackmail. And now attempted murder. Viktor Kozlov?" Reese asked. "French authorities are reopening the investigation based on our evidence. Preliminary findings suggest he was poisoned, then positioned to appear as a suicide." "And the Prague collection?" Gemma asked. "Intercepted safely. Original manuscripts recovered, forgeries secured as evidence." Relief washed over Gemma, so powerful it nearly buckled her knees. Reese was beside her instantly, his arms supporting her waist. "Leo," she said, "the only thing that mattered now. We need to find Leo." "Teams are searching," Fiona assured her. "The helicopter has moved to that sector. We'll find them." The next hour was the longest of Gemma's life as she waited at the farmhouse, now transformed into a law enforcement command center. Reese never left her side, his steady presence anchoring her as reports came in of mercenaries apprehended, evidence secured, but no sign yet of Leo and Mira. "They'll find them," Reese repeated, though his own worry was evident in the tension of his shoulders, the tightness around his eyes. "Leo is smart, and Mira is resourceful." Finally, as the first light of dawn began to color the eastern sky, the radio crackled with the news they'd been waiting for. "We found them," came the report. "Boy and woman, both unharmed. Approaching the farmhouse now." Gemma ran outside, Reese close behind her. A police vehicle was coming up the long drive, moving slowly over the rutted track. As it stopped, the back door opened, and Leo burst out, Robin the fox still clutched in one hand. "Mommy," he cried, running toward her. Gemma swept him into her arms, tears flowing freely as she held her son close, his small body solid and real against hers. "You're safe," she whispered. "You're safe. I protected Mira, just like I promised," Leo told her earnestly. "We hid in a really good spot when we heard people coming. They looked right at us but didn't see us." "The best secret agent ever," Gemma agreed, looking over his head to where Mira was emerging from the vehicle, looking exhausted but unharmed. Reese joined their embrace, one arm around Gemma, the other gently ruffling Leo's curls. "Well done, buddy. You were incredibly brave. Are the bad guys caught?" Leo asked, looking between them. "Yes," Gemma confirmed. "They're caught. They can't hurt us anymore. If you've ever had to be strong for someone you love when everything was falling apart, hit that like button right now." And if you believe in the power of reclaiming your life after someone has tried to control or diminish you, subscribe to our channel for more stories of courage and resilience. The aftermath unfolded over the following weeks with dizzying speed. Preston and Natalia were charged with multiple international crimes: art theft, forgery, money laundering, conspiracy to commit murder, attempted murder, and more. The evidence against them was overwhelming, their network of accomplices rapidly turning on each other in hopes of leniency. The art world reeled from the scandal. Museums worldwide began re-examining works that had passed through the Meridian Gallery or been donated by the Holloway Foundation. Experts who had authenticated forgeries faced scrutiny, some revealed to have been bribed, others simply deceived by the exceptional quality of the fakes. Through it all, Gemma found herself in a strange new position, that of respected expert rather than disbelieved wife. Her early concerns about the Bellini, dismissed by Preston, were now validated. Her observations about other suspicious works proved accurate. Museums sought her consultation on authentication questions, and prosecutors relied on her testimony to build cases against members of the forgery ring. "You were right all along," Fiona told her during one exhausting day of interviews. "About all of it. If the art world had listened to you earlier, this might never have grown so extensive." "If I had trusted myself earlier," Gemma corrected. "That's the real lesson here." 3 months after that terrifying night at the farmhouse, Gemma sat in the small garden of the cottage they had rented in the Cotswolds. Leo was nearby, constructing an elaborate fortress from sticks and stones, occasional consulting with Reese about structural integrity. The rental was temporary, a peaceful place to regroup while decisions about their future took shape. The London townhouse had been seized as part of the investigation, its contents catalogued for evidence. But Gemma had no desire to return there anyway. Too many false memories, too much pretense. "Penny for your thoughts," Reese said, joining her on the garden bench. "I was just thinking about how completely my life has changed in less than 4 months, she replied. "From corporate wife to fugitive to expert witness. It's surreal." "Regrets?" he asked cautiously. "About leaving Preston?" "Not one." She was surprised by the certainty in her voice. "About not seeing the truth sooner?" "Many. But I can't change the past." "Leo seems to be adjusting well," Reese observed, watching the boy who was now carefully adding moss to his fortress walls. "Children are remarkably resilient," Gemma agreed. "And he's had consistent support. Your influence has been invaluable." Reese's hand found hers, warm and solid. "I'd like to continue being a positive influence. For both of you." The simple statement contained worlds of meaning, a question, an offer, a possibility. Gemma turned to face him, studying the face that had become so dear to her. The laugh lines around his green eyes. The silver threading through his dark hair. The steadiness and patience that had helped heal wounds she hadn't even recognized. "I'd like that too," she said softly. "But I need time, Reese. I'm still figuring out who I am without Preston's influence. Still reclaiming parts of myself I thought were lost forever." "Take all the time you need," he replied, squeezing her hand gently. "I'm not going anywhere. Mommy. Reese. Come see my fortress." Leo called, waving them over excitedly. "I made a secret entrance just like the well house tunnel." They joined him, admiring his creation with appropriate enthusiasm. The structure was surprisingly sophisticated for a 7-year-old, with multiple levels, defensive walls, and indeed a hidden passage beneath one side. "You have a real talent for design," Reese told him. "Maybe you'll be an architect one day." "Or an art detective like you and Mom," Leo suggested. "Finding all the fake paintings and catching the bad guys." Gemma laughed, ruffling his curls. "You can be anything you want to be, love. That's the wonderful thing about life, we can always reinvent ourselves." Later, after Leo was asleep, Gemma received a call from Fiona with news that would once again reshape their future. "Preston's taken a deal," Fiona reported. Full cooperation in exchange for considerations during sentencing. He's naming everyone, collectors, dealers, corrupt officials, the entire network. Why? Gemma asked, surprised. Preston's narcissism had seemed too entrenched for such cooperation. Self-preservation, Fiona explained. Natalia was planning to blame everything on him. He got wind of it and decided to strike first. So they've turned on each other, Gemma mused. How appropriate. There's more, Fiona continued. The Victoria and Albert Museum has approached the prosecutor's office. They want to offer you a position, heading a new department focused on authentication and provenance verification. It would be part of a larger initiative to address the damage done by Preston's operation. The offer was unexpected but perfect, a chance to rebuild her career while helping repair the integrity of institutions she valued. I'm interested, she admitted. But I have Leo to consider. London holds difficult memories for both of us. The position could be flexible, Fiona suggested. Part-time initially, remote work options. They're very keen to have you on board. After the call, Gemma found Rhys in the cottage's small library, reviewing conservation notes for a new project. The V&A has offered me a position, she told him, still processing the opportunity. He looked up, genuine pleasure lighting his features. That's fantastic, Gem. Exactly the kind of role you were born for. It would mean decisions about where to live, Leo's schooling, our future. The emphasis on the final word was subtle but clear. Rhys set aside his notes, giving her his full attention. Whatever you decide, I'll support you, he said simply. If you want to return to London, I understand. If you prefer to stay in the countryside, my work is portable. If you need space to make these decisions independently, I respect that too. His lack of presumption, his complete respect for her autonomy, struck Gemma forcefully. So different from Preston, who had always framed his preferences as joint decisions while subtly undermining any contrary opinion she might express. I don't want space from you, she said with sudden clarity. These past months, having you beside us, supporting us, believing in me, they've meant everything. Leo adores you. And I. The words caught in her throat, not from uncertainty but from the weight of their significance. Rhys stood, crossing the small room to stand before her. You don't have to say anything you're not ready for, he assured her. But I want to, she replied, finding courage in his steadiness. I love you, Rhys. I think perhaps I always have, even when I couldn't acknowledge it. The smile that transformed his face was like sunrise breaking over the dales, gradual, beautiful, illuminating. I have loved you since you stood up to the director of the Louvre over that misattributed Vermeer, he admitted. Your brilliance, your integrity, your courage, they've always been there, Gem. Even when Preston tried to dim them. The kiss they shared was a beginning, tender but certain, a promise of possibilities to come. When they parted, Gemma felt a sense of rightness, of pieces finally falling into their proper places. So what happens now? Rhys asked. Now we build something real, Gemma replied. Together. 6 months later, Gemma stood in the newly established Authentication and Provenance Department at the Victoria and Albert Museum, surveying the space that represented not just her professional rebirth but a new chapter for the entire art world. The scandal surrounding Preston's forgery ring had prompted museums globally to reevaluate their acquisition and authentication procedures, creating unprecedented opportunities for reform. Her role was part-time, allowing her to maintain a balance between professional engagement and family life. They had settled in a cottage in Oxford, close enough to London for her work but far from the memories of her life with Preston. Leo had adjusted beautifully to his new school, making friends and excelling academically. And Rhys. Rhys had become an integral part of their lives, his patient strength and genuine affection providing a foundation unlike anything Gemma had experienced in her marriage. He had taken a position at the Ashmolean Museum's Conservation Department, combining teaching with hands-on restoration work. Their relationship had deepened gradually, naturally, built on mutual respect and shared values. Professor Holloway. Her assistant poked her head into the office. The delegation from the Uffizi has arrived for the authentication workshop. Thank you, Emma. I'll be right there. Gemma gathered her materials, smoothing her skirt as she prepared to lead a seminar on identifying sophisticated forgeries, ironically, using techniques she had developed while examining works that had passed through Preston's gallery. As she entered the conference room, she was greeted with respectful attention from curators and authentication experts from across Europe. No longer the disbelieved wife, but a respected authority whose insights were valued and sought after. Welcome to the Victoria and Albert Museum, she began. Today we'll be examining how traditional authentication methods can be enhanced with new technologies to prevent the kind of sophisticated forgeries that have recently compromised collections worldwide. As she spoke, she caught sight of a familiar figure slipping quietly into the back of the room. Rhys gave her a small, encouraging smile, his presence a silent reminder of how far she had come. Later that evening, as they walked through St. James's Park with Leo running ahead, Gemma reflected on the journey that had brought them here. Preston's sentencing is tomorrow, she said quietly. 15 years, according to Fiona. Will you attend? Rhys asked, no judgment in his tone. No, Gemma decided. That chapter is closed. I've given my testimony, provided the evidence. The rest is just aftermath. And Natalia? Facing trial in 3 countries. Victor's murder has been definitively linked to her. She'll likely never see freedom again. They walked in companionable silence for a while, watching Leo feed the ducks at the pond's edge. The simple pleasure of an ordinary moment, something Gemma had nearly forgotten could exist during her years with Preston. I received a letter from the Louvre today, Rhys mentioned casually. They've invited me to consult on the restoration of a recently rediscovered Vermeer. Gemma laughed at the synchronicity. The same director I confronted years ago. The very same. He specifically requested you consult on authentication before restoration begins. Rhys's eyes twinkled with amusement. Apparently, your reputation for spotting inconsistencies has become legendary. Paris in the spring, Gemma mused. Sounds lovely. I thought perhaps we might make it a family trip, Rhys suggested. Leo would love the museums. And... He hesitated briefly. I thought it might be a good place to discuss our future more formally. The implication was clear but delicately presented, typical of Rhys's respectful approach to their relationship. Gemma felt her heart swell with an emotion that had become wonderfully familiar over these past months, certainty. Paris would be perfect, she agreed, linking her arm through his as they watched Leo chasing pigeons across the grass, his laughter echoing in the evening air. She had fled into the night with her son to escape a dangerous lie. Had found refuge with a man whose quiet strength had helped her reclaim her own. Had rebuilt a career from the ashes of one that had been systematically dismantled. But most importantly, she had reclaimed herself, her voice, her expertise, her ability to trust her own instincts. The masterpiece of her life was still being painted, and for the first time in years, she held the brush. If you believe in second chances and the power of reclaiming your voice after someone has tried to silence you, give this video a like. And if you know someone who needs to be reminded of their own strength, share this story as a reminder that it's never too late to start over, to trust yourself, and to create the life you truly deserve. Subscribe for more stories of courage, resilience, and the triumph of the human spirit over adversity.